Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Doug Pernikoff and my lovely co-host is Cindy Vickers. And today on Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show, we have a really interesting and special guest and a long time friend of mine, and that's Miss Connie Casey. And she is the owner of the Missouri Primate Foundation in Festus, Missouri. She's been there for, how many years would you guess?
Forever.
Forever. Okay.
That's a while.
I know.
More than 3.
I went to a meeting last night just for a moment, and it was a veterinary meeting, and I don't go to too many of those, but it was like all these old guys. I was one of the old guys, and I went, how did that happen? You know, I used to look at those old vets and go, the heck with them, but now I am one of them, so the heck with me. But Connie, when did you actually, I know you guys had, your family had a pet shop in Festus, and way back then there was very loose regulation, so you acquired your first chimp, is that right, back then? How long ago?
That was in 1972.
Wow. So that's 72, 82, 92, 32. Okay.
Long time.
A long time ago. And then when did you decide to commit to bringing in more chimps, and what just brought all that together?
Actually, after we got the first chimp, and he was just a baby, and back then he was at the end of when they were importing, so he was a wild-caught import. Wow. And then they go through quarantine.
So did you actually order him at that time?
Yeah, back then they would send these brochures. There's like 4 different quarantine stations, and then they would send out these sheets every month of all the animals they had available to all the pet shops and stuff. It's
probably a good thing I wasn't available to do those things, because I have a household too.
Anyway, I guess Coco was probably about 3 years old, and somebody else in Florida, through a friend, we'd found out that they had acquired a little female chimp, and she was probably about 4, but they had also started their family, and it wasn't working out they had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and then the 4-year-old chimp. And so they were looking for a good home for their female, and so that's how we got the second one.
What was her name?
Wait. Let's go back to the first one. So the first one you just...
Imported
and got.
Can't do it anymore.
How long did you have that one before you got the second one?
He was about 3, and he was probably about a year old when we got him. It wasn't just a newborn.
So I have an immediate question. So this was brand new to you, and you'd never done it before. So what surprised you about actually owning that chimp that you just did not expect?
The one thing that we didn't expect is we thought we were getting a smaller infant that we could just pick up and hug and take around, and it took a long time to get him to come to us slowly. He was very sweet, but he wouldn't even come on your lap. We would sit in a circle with little marshmallows and raisins and little treats in our mouth, and he would come up with his lips and gently take it out of our mouth, but he wouldn't let you pick him up, and he wouldn't let you, he'd just come sit on you. And so
scared.
That was probably about, it seemed like forever, but probably only took about 2 months. And then once he changed, just like overnight, he went from not letting anybody pick him up to wanting to be carried around all the time.
It's like getting a feral animal who just doesn't really have that kind of experience, socialization with people.
And you don't know what he went through and what he remembered, because it's a pretty intelligent creatures. And
right. One of the things we did notice too is, like, very young, he was always afraid of people in uniform. So I'm thinking that when he was in quarantine, that they probably had uniforms on. And that really frightened him.
Yeah. As he got older as well?
He adjusted. He was, if they were friendly to him, he was great with them.
So I remember one story. I want to see if this is true. So you live in Festus. The chimps, I don't know if people know, but adult male chimps can be 180, 200, up to 200 pounds, and all their strength in their shoulder girdle and their arms and hands. And, of course, they have big legs, too. But he was bigger, Coco became bigger or as big as your husband, right?
Correct.
And then I heard that on Sundays your husband would drive on his Harley with Coco in the back, and they would drive around Festus, and when they were ready to come home, instead of turning left to go towards your home, he would lean the other way to make your husband go to the 7-Eleven store and get food.
Yeah, that's correct. And not only Well, I got the good
Can
job
you imagine that?
of cleaning the
Yeah.
cages and stuff on Sunday, and my husband got to go out riding with the chimp.
Yeah.
But Coco knew when he'd go in, the people at the gas station loved him, and they would always say, "Let him pick whatever he wants. He can have whatever he wants." and it only took 2 times, and he knew that. So a lot of times when my husband would come home, he would drive like 6 miles out of the way to take the back roads to come home, because he said if Coco leaned, he would either have to pull over or lose the bike.
Yeah, because your husband was thin and small,
Right.
and
Right.
Coco's a
And
big, powerful chimp.
if you came up behind him, it's like you couldn't see the man in front. All you seen was this big hairy chimp. One time, a police officer did pull him over because Coco didn't have a helmet on, and
crazy.
he walked up and he said, "Don't you think you need to put a helmet on that chimp?" And my husband had said, "Well, you want to put it on him?" And he says, "No, I think that's okay."
Good point. So I have to tell a story that's kind of related to that.
Well, just really quick,
go ahead.
I think that it might be important for people to understand that chimp. I mean, there's been stories in the news as of late, but chimps aren't all just cuddly and sweet.
No.
I mean, they can be
Right.
really dangerous animals. So,
In no way, you're right. In no way are we promoting people keep chimps
or put helmets on
or
them.
put helmets on them. But in Connie's case, we're just kind of interested in her story because it's pre-act, pre-this, pre-that, and she's done such a great job at it.
Totally. I was not implying them. Just saying that there's a lot of sort of truth in that story about, do you want to put the helmet on? Thinking if you understand that if they don't want the helmet on, this might not be pretty.
So, well, a couple of years ago, I had an adventure with a mutual friend of ours from West Plains, Missouri, and I had to drive in a big Suburban with him and his son, and they're both like 6'8", big guys. And he was like in his 70s. He had a big gray beard. He looked like me, so I was his mini-me, okay? So I'm sitting in the second row, and then he had rigged up a cage, a steel cage in the back of the car, and we had a chimp that we were transporting down to Texas, and we're going from southern Missouri. So we're driving all night, and a policeman, a state trooper in northern Texas, so he looks like one of those guys on TV with the little hats and everything, and he stops because we didn't have a light on the license plate. So he's sitting and comes up to the car very carefully. We're parked, right? And he comes up to the car, and the chimp who had been just enjoying the ride just went nuts when there was a stranger there, started screaming, and I see it was like TV with the guy with his gun on his holster, like this, and he looks in there and he goes, "Tell me, sir, that's not a dog." I said, "Sir, that is not a dog, that is a chimpanzee." He goes, "Alrighty then, be careful." He wanted to get out of there so fast. So yeah, lots of fun stories. Whenever you get to work with non-traditional animals and pets, it's always fun. It's full of, and I can imagine, Connie, you have more stories than I could ever imagine. But so she built this program up, as far as I remember, and when I came into it, she was far along. But you've had as many as how many chimps? Like 30-ish?
Yeah, at one point there was like 36 chimps.
Wow.
Facility.
And you did some breeding, but it kind of halted all that. And I know you did the educational shows and stuff like that. And to me, it's always been just a blessing to be able to go there. My kids, as youngsters, had great opportunity to be around not only the chimps, but she had other animals too.
Are we going to be able to tell our one great story, or can
Sure.
we?
Yeah.
Yeah?
You mean her?
Yeah, about being in the vet's office.
Oh, no, go ahead and tell me. I don't know.
You know, you do. I don't want to say it on the air, but for the I'm trying to sign what we're talking about. When I was there, and we were at that hospital, and
She's talking about the C-section.
I'm talking about the C-section.
Oh, yeah. I think
Can we talk about
say
that?
Yeah, that's funny. So some years ago, kind of you tell a little bit about the story, and then I'll fill in.
We had one of our female chimps. This was her first baby, and we could tell that she was in labor, struggling to have this baby, and she wasn't not making any progress. And I immediately called Dr. Doug to see if he could give us some assistance, and he made a couple of phone calls, and he said, "Okay, it's set up. Get her up here." Anyway, Doug can finish.
So I invited a wonderful OBGYN from
Human OB, because
Yes,
I was
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Human
yeah.
OBGYN.
Right, and he was from Israel. He had a very thick accent. He still practices in town. So anyway, he was kind enough.
And his son.
And his son came, and we had another veterinarian there, and he and I, the doctor and myself, we did the surgery while the other people helped with anesthesia and stuff. And we did an ultrasound first and saw that, in fact, the baby was backwards and was not going to come out without a C-section.
So just stop for a minute. Just try to imagine. This is a big chimp. This is a chimp that's like bigger than a person on the table. And the feeling is, this needs to get done before this chimp wakes up.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine trying to put this big chimp now, who has to be sedated to even get the ultrasound, and then
Right.
be on a table, and you're just seeing this huge, fantastic, hairy, real chimp in front of you that's pregnant, and they're going to do a C-section. I mean, it was unbelievable.
It was fun. So yeah, we're getting ready to do that, and Dr. Hahn was just a wonderful man. I figured, well, he does these every day, and I might get to do one in a lifetime. So that's why I wanted the human fellow there, because the anatomy is essentially the same. In fact, in many probably hundreds of years ago, but even in Europe and throughout, when they would teach anatomy in the medical schools, they would use chimps as an anatomical model when they didn't have human bodies. So they're that similar in basic form. So anyway, so we get finished with this wonderful C-section, and beautiful baby is born, and it was funny. So I looked at the doctor and I said, well, his name was Yorm. I said, well, Yorm, how was this for you to do? And he looks at me and goes, well, dog, on the inside it was very similar, but on the outside it was much hairier. So it was a great experience. And Hannah was the baby, and I got to see her grow up too. And she's an adult chimp now, so that was neat. But yeah, I mean, story after story after story. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about some of the rigors of managing chimps and your particular relationships with these chimps, especially the females.
Well, it's kind of like Cindy said, we're not promoting them as pets. They are very, very large. They are incredible animals. And if you've ever had the opportunity to hold or have a little baby chimp in your hand, I've had chimps for almost 50 years, and I'm still in awe over them, but you have to be dedicated. You have to love these guys as much as you love your human kids, or you couldn't do it, because, I'm there 24/7. I never go on a vacation or a trip or get away, but I don't care, because they're my life.
Yeah, they're family, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
And I think that
So you don't ever go away because nobody else could step in and care for them in the way you do? It's because the chimps would be really upset at the change, or because it's too much work, or
all of the above,
right.
A, B, C, and D.
All of the above, because they are very, very strong animals. And, my children, I have 2 daughters, they grow up with the chimps, and they still love the chimps, but they still have their own family and animals to take care of.
Although when I saw your daughter the other night, she pant-hooted to me like, ooh, 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 ooh,
Yeah.
instead of using English. It was great.
Yeah.
No, I'm just teasing.
Are you ever afraid of them?
No. But I'm their mom. They love me, and I think they love me as much as I love them, actually. But because they're strong, I really don't I don't let any strangers have any hands-on contact with them. It's not worth the risk to the chimps if something would happen, or the humans either. But
Yeah, you have to be so careful, and especially now as the regulatory pressures are much, much greater for those few folks that are still managing chimps in private settings. It's very, very dangerous, and you want to mitigate all risk. And this goes with all, I might just mention, with all exotics, non-domestics, and even dogs and cats. I tell my clients as a veterinarian, don't ever assume that your pet is going to behave with somebody else the way it behaves with you. And this is even more exaggerated when you're talking about these non-traditional animals that could have the strength to really hurt you, not that they're intending to. They usually do it out of fear more than anything else. So that's an important rule.
And do they have strong family ties in so much as when their children are born and the children grow, do they want to distance themselves from the children, or do they still
maintain
operate really like
relationships?
a
Like in the wild, they would live in a family group. Much in the wild, once an adult male gets mature, then sometimes they would go and find him another wife or start another family.
Really?
That's how I would do it.
Wow, this sounds entirely too
You
familiar.
know what? We're going to take a quick break, but we'll come back and continue. It's a great discussion, and of course, it's great to have you, Connie Casey from the Missouri Primate Foundation, and of course, Cindy and myself, Dr. Doug, of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. And we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody, to segment 2 of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. Cindy and I are visiting with a good friend of mine, Connie Casey of the Missouri Primate Foundation, and she's telling us a little bit about her background of her program. And then in the course of her family development, she also developed a family of unusual children, and those are today still, even though they're adults, they're still her children. So it's like you're never not a parent.
Well, you said there was an unusual family, but you didn't say what it was.
Chimpanzees.
Chimpanzees.
Oh,
thank
I thought
you.
I said that. I'm sorry. So, yeah.
In case somebody just tuned in. I'm talking about chimps.
And that's why I love Cindy so much. She always mothers me.
She didn't take Doug under her wing. She didn't adopt him. That would be an unusual family, to be sure.
Well, I told her that I'm going to retire at the farm someday and just live there.
Oh, she's
and just
so
be
excited
one of the
about
chimps. Well, I could be great because I could clean and also be one of the chimps. So that would be a great combination.
Yeah, actually, I'm just going to give a little kudos to you because every now and then, like children, some children fight, and one of the chimps got in the fight with another one, which is just being, a fresh child, except they're very big and they're very strong. And Doug showed me the pre-pictures and the post-pictures, and I always say this, but he is one extraordinary surgeon. Got to say, you could be a plastic surgeon based on what you did.
I know, I want to do plastics. Well, I was just wondering, where can I send
I
that?
make an appointment?
Where do I send the check for the compliment? Yeah, I'm interested in doing all kinds of cosmetic stuff, but when you have to do it, you have to do it. So when male chimps go after each other, or any chimp, but especially male chimps that are in some kind of social issue, so in the wild, we don't see what's going on, but we concentrate them in captivity, whether it's a zoo or a sanctuary or whatever, and they're not always able to get away from each other, I would say. And Connie taught me that most of these chimps are going to go after ears, appendages, fingers, toes, testicles, and I think they do some of that as just to basically destroy the ability of another male to represent himself socially in the group. Does that sound?
Yes, that sounds right.
Well, it's also easy. I mean, that's what you can grab.
Yeah. Well, the chimp I saw recently that had injuries, you could see his foot had a lot of injuries because he didn't want to fight, but he was like, I'm sure he put that foot up as a defense, and that was the target. But tell us a little bit about, the kind of behaviors that you've kind of picked up just watching your chimps, and maybe you could talk a little bit about in particular, the female behavior. How do you know when a chimp's pregnant?
Well, it's a lot of because they cycle every month, just like a human female. And sometimes when they get pregnant, they stop cycling. But many times they will be pregnant and they will still cycle throughout the pregnancy.
Really?
So sometimes it's difficult to know for sure how long they are.
Now you mean cycling is
having a menstrual period.
But I mean, do they have the swelling?
Yes, like where women swell on the inside, the chimps swell on the outside. That's why, like a lot of times, if you go to the zoo or something, you see the big bulgy rear end, and that's because they're in a cycle. I can tell
or you can go to Brazil and see the same thing. That's a big deal now.
Told you.
I have these two old females. Old, I'd say they're in their 50s.
50s?
Yes, but in captivity, there's chimps out there has lived like close to 70 years.
Really?
In the wild, they usually say 25 to 35 years max, you know.
A lot of pressures in the wild state.
Right. Plus, they're tearing down the trees. There's really no wild, no safe place. Even protected areas, how do you protect it 24 hours? You know, people still poach them, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, these two females, they came separate, but they were very, very close. And both of them were actually pregnant at the same time. One was a little ahead of the other. And I had them. I have one of the enclosures is right up next to the bedroom with a huge window where you can watch. Anyway, I got up one morning and I'm seeing that one of the chimps named Kimmy has this baby, and in an instant I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe Kimmy had her baby before Gabby did, and then I thought, no, that can't be. Well, then I glanced in the corner, and Gabby was laying there, and she was very, very pale, and there was a lot of blood in the floor. Anyway, I called Dr. Doug right away, and he was tied up, but he said he'd get there, and he made another call to our special friend that delivered the C-section. Anyway, she had trouble passing the placenta, but the female that had the baby she went over and picked up the baby and carried the baby and held it. When the baby started crying, she would take the baby back over and give it to the mom so she could suckle. And then when the baby got done, she would pick it back up and carry it around.
Oh my goodness.
She was a midwife.
Right.
Well, she was like her sister, her mother.
That baby is 10 years old now, and they shared that baby their whole life. Actually, the baby lost its real mom a couple years ago, but the bond is so great, and it had been constantly because they shared that baby, like I said, for at least 8 years, passing it back and forth, and so she really had two moms, and but
it helps. That helps to build a strong social, cultural kind of relationships that in the wild would be critical to survival.
Right.
Maybe not as much so in captivity, but it's great to see.
And I guess they have an imprinting phase like humans do and puppies do, so that for her they really were. Both. Was it a girl, the baby?
Yes.
That for her they really both were.
I think you're
her
right.
Mother.
Right. But I do have to mention this. You know, a lot of people talk about the babies growing up with moms, much like in some of the books of Jane Goodall with the story Flint. These moms were older when they had their babies and were extremely lenient. And that baby's a little brat. She's 10 years old, when she was little, we lovingly called her the princess, and now we lovingly call her the little devil girl.
Yeah, so she got spoiled.
Yes,
yeah,
very.
that's so interesting. So, I had a question. I forgot what it was.
Well, another thing that I've seen Connie do, which is really interesting, with all this experience, it's very difficult in zoos. Every time we want to mix and match different species or different individuals within a group, it takes a lot of thinking. Like, is this going to work? So she has to know the personality of the individual animals in order to make good, sound decisions that are going to be safe for the animals. And,
well, in that case, she did not make that decision. I mean, they made that decision.
Right. But what I was getting to is that I know that in many times, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that you will often share managing the baby with the mother.
Right.
And so it goes from human to baby to back to mom. And because of her relationship with the females, she's the matriarch, and she can get away with that. But it's also great for the developing a relationship with the baby.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Then
Can you imagine? Because I've often gone to the house, and there in the middle of the den is a rocker, one of those automatic rocking. I go, oh, I didn't know you were pregnant, Connie. No, it's Candy's baby.
So can we go back to these men again? So they will sometimes just adopt a second family, like they'll have one family with one female, and then do they just get...
You mean when she was talking about them emigrating out of the group?
Yeah. Is it just that they need that experience of just starting from scratch, essentially?
It's a lot like your son. Your son is your baby, but your son grows up and now he's 18, and he wants to go find a girlfriend.
Yeah, but they did that
Wait a
once,
minute.
and then they need to do it again.
I'm 64 and I want to go find a girlfriend.
Yeah, but guys, I mean, you said that he had a family. He grew up, he had a family.
Right.
And once the family grows up, then rather than have more children...
Well, he's not going to be able to breed if he's a subordinate male. And so the adult one male or two males, is usually one male per group, is going to be in charge of breeding until he's challenged by a lesser male.
And could he be challenged by his own son then?
Sure.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
kind of like they're too much like people, you know.
Yeah. Because I used to fight with my dad over my mom.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
It's very, very interesting. And so in the wild, that would be the thing to do, to go out and kind of create your own relationship. Do they, and I don't know this, but I should know this, many species will move around in teenage groups. They call them male groups. And those are male bonded that are still searching for their own place, and they'll go out like a bunch of guys and hang out for some amount of time, a year or whatever, until they
It's
find...
like the Amish thing.
Is that what they do?
No, where they go out for that spring something or another, and they're allowed to leave, and they can decide right then if they want to come back to the Amish community or they want to leave it. But they can go do whatever they want to do.
Really?
Yeah. Spring Hust by this Nick. I don't know what it's called, but yeah, it's You ever saw a movie about
Spring.
this? It's something like that, similar, right?
So that's part of what your experience has been, and we're going to take a break in just a moment again. But I wanted you to just kind of think about where or the animals that you have retrieved, the chimpanzees, have come from. Where, shows, or how did, and it's different now, but back then, if you can just get us started, and then we'll break that.
Over the years, if you've had a chimp and raised the chimp and been around it, it's very apparent how special they are. And at one point, we thought, what a shame that some of these animals that grew up in research laboratories or places where they really didn't get somebody to love them, that they would end up being our pets that got too big and somebody shipped them off to a lab thinking that was a good place, and it's not.
Yeah.
And fortunately, they don't use chimps in research labs anymore.
We'll talk about that as soon as we get back, because there are changes in the laws right now. But again, Connie Casey from Missouri Primate Foundation telling us a lot of information about her history with her chimpanzees, and Cindy and I are just kind of amazed at some of the similarities to humans, I would say. So we'll be back in just a moment, continue our discussion. Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. Hope you'll come back and listen with us. Thank you.
Like you. One more time. Yeah, can learn to be like someone like me.
Hi, everybody. We're back with our third segment of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show, and our special guest, Connie Casey from the Missouri Primate Foundation. My wonderful co-host had to skedaddle out of here. I don't know if it's a boyfriend thing or what. No, I think it's a grandmother thing. But she's be back with us next week, and I love Cindy. She's just amazing. So we were just talking. What was the last thing we mentioned, Connie? We were talking about sourcing animals that have come, or chimpanzees that have come your way, have come from lots of different sources. But you were saying either a bad laboratory situation or a home where it just these guys get, mature, sexually mature and physically mature, and they are so dangerous. I mean, they have big fangs. The canines on the big males can be about inch and a half to 2 inches, inch and a half at least.
Right.
And then their strength. I was telling you before that, as I've been told, I don't know if it's exactly true, but because they have so much strength in their shoulders and their arms and their hands, I've been told that their strength in the shoulder girdle is equivalent to 7 adult men. I don't know if it's exactly right, but that's a pretty strong animal.
Right. I've heard 7 to 10.
Yeah.
They're very, very strong. And, some of the animals that I have, people have a misconception, like when they go to the zoo, that, animals that are born to the zoo are there, stay there their whole life. And unfortunately, that's not true.
Right.
Zoos trade animals or move animals around all the time. And some of the animals that I have actually came out of zoos. that either went bankrupt or needed to eliminate one of the males because there was a conflict, because they do compete once they get to maturity, for the attention of the females.
And I want to make a point that these are, again, having been in this for so long, the actions of the past aren't the actions of today. For instance, zoos have very, very strict compliance records. I mean, across the zoo community, the American Association of Zoological Parks and Aquariums, they dictate where these special endangered species like chimpanzees go. It's much more strict than it used to be. So, number one, they're only going to try and keep a certain genetic population that they know are fairly pure. They want to know the source of where the animals came from, which country in Africa, and this and that, because if there are little subtle genetic differences about populations that have been separated for hundreds or thousands of years, we may not know that till it's too late. So they try and keep the individuals pure and breeding with other pure animals. And now they have something called the species survival plans, or the SSPs. That's been going on for a good, I would say 15, 20 years now. And that, again, is part of the zoos collectively organizing to get the proper number of animals maintained and stabilized in the captive population. And not only in the United States, but throughout the world. In South America, there are zoo programs that are affiliated here. And, of course, in Europe, Australia, and all about. So there's always this big conflict about, what should we be doing with these endangered species? And now, recently, the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, has closed down, or I think they're basically put some kind of moratorium on using chimps for research. And they're trying to move those animals out of what are very dismal kind of settings and into sanctuary kind of settings, but everything takes money and time. And somewhere along the line, there's always been a group or a faction of people that decide that other people, like private owners like Connie, and there are very few remaining anymore, should not have chimps. And we're not here really to discuss the pros and cons of those opinions. I think it should be taken on a case-by-case basis. And again, no one encourages keeping them, but if you have them and you're successful and you've been doing it, it's neither right to extract them, I don't think, and stick them someplace else when they're in your family. And especially, as I've seen Connie, this is your family. I see how you are committed to them, and I don't know too many people that are even that committed to their own children. So, we need to support people who need to be supported. Yeah. That's what I'll say about that. Anyway, so what's the most interesting chimp, would you say? I like to use the word sophisticated. So chimps that really seem to come close to some of the behaviors we see, or have been able to think things out like humans do. What is it that most impresses you on in your history or on a day-to-day basis?
Oh gosh, there's so much. It's really hard to pinpoint, because, like I said, I've been around chimps almost 50 years, and every day I see something that impresses me, or they're just incredible animals. And like I said, I'm not promoting them as pets, but if you're dedicated enough, all I can say is I sure love my guys. Yeah,
really. And you shared them with so many people in the past. Again, when the laws were different and everything, you did take baby chimps to birthday parties and stuff, and it was an educational and entertainment kind of opportunity. And although we like to say that's a no-no, the reality is all of us go to the zoo as young kids and have situations, opportunities like you used to offer, where we get impressed by the critter of whatever the subject is, whether it's an elephant in the zoo or a chimpanzee at one of your programs. And you can see it stimulated me to want to work with animals and endangered species. And everybody I know that's gone into some aspect of the animal field use those kind of outlets and experiences to learn and be stimulated by the opportunity to see a chimp or see this or see that.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, in the past, we have shared little chimps with so many people, and it's truly even more now so than it was in the past, a once in a lifetime experience, because it's with the laws changing and AR people out there, it's going to be a thing of the past.
Right.
know?
Oh, yeah. Very soon. In fact, there are a lot of, in state by state mostly, but many states are just disallowing all exotics, all non-domestic species. So if you could have camels before, you're not going to have camels. Not going to have primates. You're not going to have great apes. You're not going to have the big cats, the lions, tigers, and such. And, part of that I get. And again, if you don't take it point by point or circumstance by circumstance, it certainly is a good general policy to keep those critters away from the wrong people, because they're going to hurt somebody, hurt themselves, even possibly kill somebody. So I think we all agree with that. It's the way the laws are coming about that are wrong.
It is. And just a tiny fraction in defense of the animals, it's like I always say, people's ready to jump on it if especially an exotic animal hurts something. But people think nothing when people kill other people every day.
Worse than, and that was one of the things we were talking about years ago. There was a chimp that really mauled another human, and the point was that circumstances, how many of these actually happen. When I was doing some research on this subject, it turned out that the incidents, one person injured or God forbid killed isn't too many. But at the same time, if you look at the car wrecks or murders and stuff like that, it's just, there's no comparison. Right. Or even domestic dog bites are much, much more concerning than the very, very rare intermittent opportunity for another exotic like a chimpanzee to bite somebody. But, it's always a good topic to discuss, and it's always something people should address with an open mind on both sides of the table. Because what happens is if we just get so dogmatic about our opinion and we can't see another perspective, nothing gets accomplished, nothing positive. Right. That's my opinion. What do I know? I'm just a vet. So, anyway, tell me something else. I'm trying to think of another. Oh, tell me about the feeding. What is unique or more? I think people might be interested to know exactly what these guys do eat.
I feed a lot of fresh produce, fruits and vegetables, but I also feed monkey chow, high protein monkey chow, and that's kind of a staple. It's got all the vitamins and minerals and stuff that they have.
Will they eat essentially anything we eat?
Pretty much. If you came in with a bag of McDonald's Happy Meals, they don't turn them down.
Right.
And I haven't seen a chimp at all that doesn't love spaghetti.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I guess I'm part chimp then, because I really love spaghetti as well.
And some human food is okay. I wouldn't feed them all stuff that we eat because if you look around, I think everybody, including myself, is way overweight. So probably not all the people food is so good. Right.
Well, it's interesting. I'll tell one quick story, but gorillas have a really high incidence of dissecting aortic aneurysms. It's when a vessel ruptures, and we assign that in humans who have been eating terrible diets and high cholesterol meats and stuff like that. And in the wild, they're essentially herbivores, so they're eating fresh grasses and leaf matter and stuff. So you wonder, well, why is that? So it's one of those interesting kind of asides that I think people should be aware of, that every species is different. They have their little idiosyncratic physiology and anatomy and biochemistry. We can't just all put them all into one.
Right. So. Just for me, for example, I'm heavier than I need to be, and I think, well, if I just lost 50 pounds, I could get up the steps better and I could do this better. But then you look around and there's skinny people that has the same problem.
Right,
so
right.
It's like, who knows?
So this has been really, really wonderful. We're going to take one more break. We'll come back and we'll just kind of do a real quick recap. I love hearing the stories. I've known some of them, but I always learn something when I'm around you. And again, it's Dr. Doug Pernikoff and my wonderful guest, Connie Casey from the Missouri Primate Foundation. And we're at Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. We'll be back for our final segment. Thank you. Well, folks, we're back with the final segment 4 of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. We've had a great show visiting with Connie Casey and her history of contact with exotic animals, in particular chimpanzees. And I think I'm correct in saying you may have raised as many as 50 or 60 baby chimps in your time.
Right, close to that.
Yeah. So again, we always talk about the differential kind of concerns and perspectives about keeping non-domestics, exotics in your home. And of course, for you, it's really a different perspective. This is your family. These animals and these chimpanzees have been living with you, some raised there from birth, and others that you brought into the home and just accommodated their needs. I want to thank you for that commitment in history. Do you want to make a final statement to the listening community about your feeling about what this experience has given your life?
You know, it's really hard. I said it earlier, I love these animals with all my heart. I can't imagine them not being in my life. I don't think it's right that some of the new laws and some of the AR want to rip these animals away from the only home they've ever had, because they are in a family group and they do bond just like humans. They get in squabbles just like humans and they get over it. But there's such a strong bond, especially with the primates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you've proven that there can be a bond that kind of transcends just the animal to animal, and you put in the human to animal.
I can tell you a little story, and this has been a long time ago. When we were doing a birthday party, and the chimp was out playing on the swing set with us, the kids, and this one little girl fell off the swing, and Kaylee was little. Kaylee is one of the chimps. And she was way over on the other side of the yard, and she seen this little girl start to fall, and she ran over, and before anybody could get to this little girl, she scooped this little girl up in her arms and sat there and rocked her.
Oh, my God.
I mean, but I can tell you amazing stories like that all the time.
I can't get my mom to do that. Well, again, for me, it's been a great adventure knowing you as a friend and also being able to help you as a veterinarian. I've learned so much about critters and in particular about the chimpanzees. And all the animals I've worked with in the zoo world, there isn't too much I haven't touched, but I have to tell you, chimpanzees and then bonobos, which we had a topic on another show, is basically a very uniquely identified chimpanzee group out of the Congo. Both those animals are just amazing to be around. And just like you said, you learn or you see something behaviorally, you go, oh my God, that's so familiar, to a human action. And it's a lifelong learning, a lifelong opportunity. So you've really maximized it, and that's very cool. Yeah. I hope one day you can get the place stabilized where you can open it up to some public viewing, because I think people need to hear your story more and appreciate where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, and that would be good. And, I want to take this opportunity to tell you what a wonderful vet Dr. Doug has been.
I'll send you that's checkware.
super blessing to me and my family of animals. And
well, it's a pleasure. And like I said, my kids have also had the experience of growing up around your facility and your critters. And, it's just once you experience it, you don't forget. And I still have people coming into my clinic that we've helped with a lot of other animals, like lions and tigers and stuff like that. And people will tell me stories about 20 years ago when they were in the clinic and they got to see this, or when they went to see your chimps or whatever. So it is a lasting, impactful opportunity. And I just want to thank you one more time, and I want to thank my audience for listening. Dr. Doug Pernikoff of the Clarkson Wilson Veterinary Clinic. If you need to get a hold of me, you can call me at 636-530-1808. Cindy Vickers is training out of there as well, so if you need training, 636-530-1808. She's an amazing trainer. And thank you so much, Connie, and I love you, and we'll be back next week with another wonderful topic. Bye-bye.
Thank you.